you see people who write down methodically in little notebooks exactly what numbers and colours have come in the last sort of 40 spins. That is completely irrelevant because it's like tossing a
Okay.
coin.
Yeah.
Every single time that ball starts spinning, it's as if nothing has happened
Yeah. It's a 1 in
previously.
36. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's very brightly colored and it's very loud and it's fun for a while.
We want to be free to do what we want to do.
Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barker, President Hell Danger.
This is 1095. Cool. So James, yeah, how you doing? Good to chat. Good morning. Afternoon for me, morning for you.
Good morning, Matt. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Cool. So it's a beautiful backdrop you've got there, and lovely English looking manor house by the look of it. I can only see obviously what's within the window, but I know you're gonna tell us there's a connection to your grandfather to the book we're going to talk about. Maybe we want to start there, and as you do, give us a bit of an introduction on yourself and everything else.
Okay, sure. So thanks. I'm actually born and bred in England, but I've moved around a lot. I live in LA at the moment, but I'm here visiting the Chiltern Hills, which is about an hour west of London. And this is my mother's house. It's a very old house, hundreds and hundreds of years old. It's not a manor house. It's a cottage, really.
Okay.
But the connection to the book, The Gambler's Game, is that my grandfather, Bill, and his wife, my grandmother, lived here in their more senior years.
Cool. And the book is so that they were. Well, is this the book? The book is based on the people that live there, right? Your grandfather that lived there, because the book is based on a character from the turn of the century, right? As in the last century.
Specifically Bill Darnborough, who is my grandfather, who was born in 1869, and he's American, and he was a baseball player. And he played in the Midwestern leagues in the 1890s in Denver and Kansas and even Nebraska and even New York, actually. And he was a roulette player at the same time. And then eventually he became incredibly good. And he went to Monte Carlo. He lived there for 8 years. And in fact, he's the only American to break the bank at Monte Carlo playing roulette. And this was a very glamorous time in Monte Carlo, very different to today. So I wrote a book about it called The Gambler's Game.
Cool. That must have been a very. I'm going to ask you about the writing process and everything, but I just think I suppose the family connection and just the research process must have been really interesting. I would imagine. Did you know the whole story before you started, or was the whole process of writing it about also uncovering a lot about your family and the family tree and your grandfather and stuff?
Well, that's what's amazing about it, because not only was his life an adventure, but finding out about his life was an adventure for me, because, I have elderly cousins who knew him, but only as an old man, and he never spoke about his previous life to anybody. And so it was a journey of discovery. And so my family are amazed, a little horrified, generally, I hope, quite pleased. They're a critical bunch, but it was fascinating. It took 3 years of research to find out everything.
Wow.
But especially, when he went around the whole of America with his own roulette wheel, playing in saloons in the Old West, and it was a pretty dangerous time.
Yeah, I bet.
So finding out about all that and going to Monte Carlo, and the directors of Monte Carlo Casino absolutely loved this. Because it was really the heyday when there were, Russian Grand Dukes and Italian counts and French countesses and milling around in Monte Carlo. So it was really fun, kind of walking in his shoes.
Yeah.
For 3 years, and I still am. Here we are today. I'm still talking about it and promoting the book, and it's fantastic.
And did you find when you went through that journey of visiting these places? I mean, was he famous within his own right? Did people still know of him? Did you find pictures on the wall, or were you telling other people about who he was? And has it still been remembered through, I suppose, generations of other people within some of these places?
Well, yes, because he was the youngest baseball pitcher ever signed for Denver. And I found myself sitting in the basement of a vintage baseball expert near Boulder, Colorado. And he knew all about him. And, he knew that he was right-handed. It was they called him the fastest fastball west of the Mississippi, I think. This is somebody who has a picture of himself and Ken Burns on the wall because he was a consultant with Ken Burns' documentary on the history of baseball. So this gentleman is, he was fascinated to learn that we've got one of Bill's baseball cards.
Yep.
We got it in an auction. There are two that we know of. One's in the Met Museum in New York, and we've got the other one. And then there's Bloomington, Illinois, where he had his own casino on Courthouse Square, opposite the courthouse. And so on the front, it was a nice looking sort of steakhouse. But I've been to the property, and it's a very, very deep house, and that's where he had all his roulette going on. Perfectly legal, of course, yep. Being opposite the courthouse. But so of course they know all about him because he was he's like Bloomington's famous son. So that's been great. And of course Monte Carlo, they knew all about him.
And what was the baseball gambling? Well, I know a little bit about gambling. I know less about baseball, actually. Is there any connection between the two and the reason he got into roulette? And was this kind of a pastime between seasons or what? Or is it just completely unconnected? What was the relationship between those two things, if at all?
Well, for him, what happened is one of his teammates took him, he kind of took him under his wing because he was young and just 17. And he took him under, or maybe 18 by then, he took him under his wing and he took him to this really down and out kind of club called the Tivoli Club in Denver. And it was run by a guy called Soapy Smith, who eventually met his end being shot on the pier at Skagway, Alaska. You couldn't make this up. It's extraordinary, the whole thing. And so Bill became fascinated with roulette. He was very good at mathematics, and he understood things like statistical probability and things like that. But, these baseball players in those days, even at the top of their game, they didn't get paid hardly anything. They had to rent their own uniforms. They took these huge train journeys. And then, of course, as you said, there's the downtime between seasons. So he had a job and stuff, but he just gradually got into roulette until he eventually ended up having his own casino in Illinois. And it goes on from there. It eventually took over his life, and he played solidly for 20 years. In Monte Carlo, he played 8 hours a day for 8 years, often standing up the whole time.
Wow. But by the way, if I ask you any questions and it's a spoiler alert on the book, just say. I don't want to make you give away all of the story, but it is quite it is quite fascinating because anyone who can break the back. For me, like I said, I've been in casinos. I've done a little bit of gambling purely for fun when I've been in Macau or other places. But the one thing I do like to do, and when I do that, is play roulette. However, when I look at that, yes, there is mathematical ways of looking at, the probability. But for me, what is it? 32 numbers, is it? I can't remember. 36?
36, yeah.
36. There is the casino, the house really does have the upper hand. How do you, if you're there for 8 hours and, it's unlike blackjack where the odds are much slimmer, right? And you can kind of play the game. How do you play the game of roulette and have any edge over a long period of time? Because surely, mathematically, the house always has a much, much bigger probability of taking your cash, right?
I had to do so much research about this because I'm not a gambler. And it is fascinating how you see people who write down methodically in little notebooks exactly what numbers and colors have come in the last sort of 40 spins. That is completely irrelevant because it's like tossing a coin.
Yeah.
Every single time that ball starts spinning, it's as if nothing has happened.
Yeah, it's a 1 in 36. Yeah.
Exactly. The trick is, at least as far as, I mean, we'd be having this conversation on my yacht if I had all the answers. But the Bill's thing was patience. He never did anything stupid. He never tried to double his money or play rash bets or think, hey, it's time to go. We've got to get back on the boat. Let's hurry up. He was incredibly methodical, and I mean, I've got letters from like Sir Hiram Maxim, who invented the machine gun. Now he's a statistical probability expert because he's an engineer and all that. He couldn't work out how Bill did this, and we've got a letter from him, which I published in the book, which is, this is what you did last night, and I know that I see that you neutralized the zero, and can you please share with me some details of your system? Now, so if the inventor of the machine gun can't work out Bill's system, then nobody can. But as far as I can see, I think it really is just being incredibly patient. I mean, he played for 25 years.
Yeah.
And, it's like a lot of things. If you're very, very patient, it will come. But the other thing is that he spent years and years and years before he got to Monte Carlo piling up a war chest of money. So, he played in all the underground casinos in New York,
right? Okay.
Buffalo, New York. Saratoga was a big famous casino in New York State. And so he could afford to lose. That's another thing, is knowing that if you've lost, it's not the end of the world.
Makes sense. So, and what about yourself? I mean, your journey into becoming an author. I know you're in the UK at the moment doing a bit of a book tour, promoting the book. And yeah, what about your own background? So obviously sound very English, but spent, I understand, a fair bit of time in the US. Yeah, well, what has been your journey to this point, and how you ended up here? And is this the future now, or a bit of a kind of step off and try something else for a while?
Well, I left England when I was 19, and I spent my 20s in South Africa, and I was a magazine publisher. I published PGA Golf magazine, Rugby World Cup magazine, lots of fun stuff. Then I went to Australia in my 30s, and then I went to California later on because I have an aversion to cold weather, much like you. And so I've been lucky enough to have had the kind of career that allowed me to move around quite freely. And LA, this whole thing is really quite funny, because I got an email from someone in England who said we were emailing each other about some other stuff unrelated, and this email arrived and he said, "I hope you don't mind, I Googled you. You're the grandson of the American who broke the Bank of Monte Carlo, and you really need to write a screenplay. It'll be a blockbuster, and you live in LA, so you must know everyone in the film business." And I'm like, sure, I've got Chris Nolan's number on speed dial. Let me just get hold of him. And so my wife convinced me that the best idea was to actually write the whole book. She said, "This is what you've been waiting for. It's time." And so we started gathering up as much information as possible, and then started doing serious research. And newspaper archives are available online now. And in those days, everything was in the newspapers.
Yeah, right.
Everything. So it's amazing, actually, how, if you're writing historical fiction, it's amazing how much information you can get. I mean, incredibly accurate. Like I've got a photograph of a barman called Michael Flattery, and he worked for Eugene Madden at the saloon on 4th Street in Denver in 1887. And I've got his photograph.
Wow.
And that, so all credit to all these people around the world who scan all these documents and newspaper articles and things. And of course, it's baseball, so every single game is documented. So all the characters in the book are real. There's, well, apart from a couple, I think there's 173 people in this book, and they're all real people. And I'm giving them a voice, and getting them singing limericks to each other in the saloon in Kansas and stuff. It's been really fun.
It does sound like it does sound fun. It does sound like a good movie, but it also sounds like you've approached it in the right way, because of trying to go backwards from a movie to a book is a lot more difficult, and also usually not as impactful and effective as going, from a book to a movie. And now you'll ultimately have something that, a kind of a document that can support the writing of a really good screenplay or script, either a movie or a series. Is that kind of the consideration, putting yourself forward and thinking of where this might go, that you go book to TV at some point later?
So, I live in LA, so I do know a couple of people, and so far there's sort of two camps to this. There's agents in New York who say it should be a feature film, and there are agents in LA who say it should be an 8-part series on Netflix or HBO or Hulu, or I don't mind. The interesting thing for a writer at this point is you've got to be prepared to step away completely, because the studios don't want the writers even on the set.
Yeah. And
so I'm sure that they're going to, either way, the journey continues, and it's a great adventure. I would love to see this on screen. And, I can easily picture people sitting on a transatlantic plane journey watching all 8 episodes in a row. And we'll see what happens. But, this to me is, I never expected to be doing this. And I'm grateful every single day for all the emails I get and the reviews that I get of people with tiny little details saying, a connection. Like, I can't believe, we used to live in Lincoln, Nebraska, and the details that you've captured are extraordinary, or things like that. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Have you given up the day job, or is this a full-time pursuit then, or are you still kind of, in the publishing space from a professional point of view on the other side?
Well, you can't write a book and then just put it on Amazon and hope for the best. So the idea that digital marketing has taken over completely isn't actually accurate, because you still do need to go to book festivals and you need to give talks. And so I've given lots and lots of talks in LA particularly, and Santa Barbara, and in London. And it's like you get your little tribe of people who tell other people, and that is incredibly powerful. Still, it doesn't matter if you're making movies or writing books or selling art or anything creative. It's having people talk to their friends, hopefully positively. That actually makes a huge difference. So whilst there is this sort of perception that Twitter and YouTube and whatever is so important, yes, it is. But nothing beats people. I mean, this is a 400-page book. It's not a tweet about it. There are different aspects of it that are appealing to some people that they really want to share. And so I found this. I haven't entirely given up the day job, but getting out there and getting hold of the marketing and the live marketing, and then being lucky enough to be invited onto podcasts like this is all part of it. So I haven't entirely given up the day job, but I've been asked if there's a prequel or a sequel. So we'll see.
Cool. Well, I think you're right. I mean, actually, yeah, like people just kind of get to the point today where everyone thinks social is everything, online is everything. But the truth is, and if you're doing a movie, maybe that's a bit different because you've got content you can share. But a book is a book, and it's written by a person, and those two things in person are probably much better presented in a networking format where you can talk to an audience and share. And those people then go online and share on Twitter or all these other social platforms. So in terms of you're in the UK, you've already done your kind of launch there, have you? Or is that coming up? Or where are you at with that? And talk us through some of the highlights or what will be happening in the US. I'm not sure which way around you're doing it, but yeah, talk us through some of the book tour and talking and stuff that people can connect on, or even come and see and join. So,
well, the talks are fantastic because you get, I give a little talk, and then you get questions which are completely unexpected, often from strangers.
Yeah.
And I love that. I absolutely love it. I try to give answers as brief as possible because it's so easy just to go off and, well, let me tell you about the backstory is amazing. Like the first rally in Monte Carlo, and these are all the cars. Too much detail. So I love doing the live events, and I love doing the podcasts. We do a lot of social media. In fact, Bill himself has an Instagram account. He died in 1958, but he's got more friends than I'll ever have, and followers. And we keep that up to date. So it's the Bill Darnborough on Instagram. And there we put up pictures of the old cars that they used to drive, like De Dietrich's. And, he was involved in the first Monte Carlo rally in 1911. And that's when they started parking cars outside the casino in Monte Carlo. It's all about marketing if you're a casino. And a lot of really fun stuff from that, and Facebook and things. And I think, I was just thinking about this, if you're promoting a film, you go on talk shows.
Yeah.
And, it's you can't just say, hey, this book is a literary masterpiece. It'll blow your socks off. Go get out and read it. Go on Amazon, read it, and then write a review. You've got to do more than that, because there's always the spontaneity of this kind of thing is so important, I think. Especially when you're dealing with historical fiction. But, we're very lucky that we're not talking about, one of the wives of Henry VIII. I mean, there's less of a time lapse. So that makes it much easier to kind of touch the past. And, you go and you see the same buildings. Like Monte Carlo Casino hasn't changed at all since he was there. They've still got the same chandeliers and the same view over the harbor and everything else.
Awesome.
So it's much more tangible, at least to me. So yes, this juggernaut continues. I'm speaking in the Midwest, following the trail that he took when he was playing baseball when he was born. So he was born in southern Illinois, and we have a little cemetery down there in a little woodland in a cornfield. It's called the Darnborough Cemetery, even though he's buried in England because he moved to England. But so there's all those tiny little towns. Actually, a very, very successful best-selling author told me not long ago, if you're promoting a book, the best place to do it is the tiny little towns and the little communities. If you go onto Madison Avenue, 2 people will turn up.
Yeah.
But it's the little towns where, as long as there's a connection somehow, however tenuous, that's where people turn up. So that was a very, very good tip for me.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're getting to the heart of the story and how people can connect to it, right? In the city, if you can find those people, great, but much more difficult. So that does make sense. So. What about I'm interested to know your process of approaching the writing. That sounds like you had a little bit of an advantage because of your professional background. You've obviously, been in the publishing space, if that's the right term, I'm not sure, but Rugby World Cup magazine, things like that, or Rugby magazine. What was obviously a massive amount of research with this, and it's a pretty big book, like when you actually sat down to kind of pull that together as a story, did it just flow? It was easy. Did you have a certain way of approaching it? Did you work with an editor, essentially, and that was important? Talk us through a bit of the process. What was good and what made you bang your head on the wall, I suppose, because writing can be like that sometimes.
You only remember the good bits, actually. It's like school meals. So I had an advantage. You know how Chris Nolan makes movies that sort of jump around in time like that and goes backwards and in reverse and entropy and things? I can't do any of that. I had to write this in the present tense in chronological order. Otherwise, I would have lost track. I would have confused myself, let alone the reader. I'm not a big fan of flashbacks. So I wanted to take you on this journey so that, for example, you learn how to play semi-professional, professional baseball as he does. You learn how to play roulette in these down-and-out saloons at the same time that he does. And so from an actual writing perspective, that makes it easier. Because instead of having 1,000 jigsaw pieces all shaken up in the box, you've got them laid out in a line, like a chronological line already, and then it's just putting them in place and then coloring them in. So I started with the facts, only the facts. And I can follow Bill Darnborough. I can see where he was at what time, which team he played for, which hotel he stayed at in LA, because the hotels always told the newspapers who was in town. And then it's a case of bringing voices to these people. And, there were long train journeys. So that the baseball team, for example, Denver to Kansas, 35 hours on a train, because they stopped at every single tiny little town on the way. So you've got to make that interesting. What were they doing on the train? Were they playing cards, drinking whiskey, singing? And so I've got to tell you, all of that was just huge fun. So once I had the skeleton and the basis of the story, bringing it to life was just great fun.
Brilliant.
And you write and research at the same time, at least with me, because it's not like a fiction. So I can't just say, okay, I'm going to write for the next 6 hours and make it all up.
Yeah.
Because this is based on fact. So it's a slightly different process.
And how long did it take you from beginning to end? It's yeah. You said years, right? At the beginning, I wasn't sure. So yeah,
it was 3 years.
Okay.
So I went to Colorado, Indiana, Illinois, Mexico City, and London, obviously. There's a lot of it in London. And Jimmy Rothschild's house, not far from here, Waterston, which plays a very important part in the book. I'm not going to tell you exactly the details. You will see. And Monte Carlo. And meeting a lot of people, meeting experts in baseball was really, really important, because it's not like watching it on TV. I want to know. So you get to feel the umpire's reaction when sharpened cleats go through his toes. And when 3,000 avid fans raid the pitch and steal the gun of the sheriff, and the whole team goes to court. Then that was for playing on the Sunday, and that's all true.
Awesome.
It's all true. But the way that the journalists reported it in the newspaper isn't as exciting as it should be. So there's things like that. I mean, as you can tell, I loved the whole experience. But you've got to approach this kind of thing very seriously. It's not a hobby. And, I really wanted to make this right. I'll never get another chance to do this or redo it. I had a lot of help as well. And this is very important for new writers especially, is that these days it feels like you're an island, but you're really not. There's a lot of people who can help you out there. And I asked for help from all kinds of people. And I got an editor. Who writes from a female point of view. She writes historical fiction in the Midwest, and I needed help describing emotions, because you'll understand this. So I'm a product of an English boarding school, which means I don't understand emotions.
Right. Or at least for a short period of
time. I know our schools used to play rugby against each other. I know that.
That's another story.
So the only emotions that you'll ever see is blood and crying. But so I needed to be able to describe a woman's emotions in letter form, because she's writing to Bill, and so she gave me a lot of help with that, and so that's important.
That's super interesting.
Don't try and do it all yourself, because you may be an expert in some areas, but if you're doing a huge project like this, you don't know everything, and people can help. And then weird things happen along the way. So a new Downton Abbey film came out, and my grandparents are in it, because there was a film within a film. So a film crew arrived at Downton Abbey to make a silent movie. Downton Abbey agreed to it because they'll get money to pay for the roof. It's a charming story. Anyway, the film is called The Gambler, and it's about this woman who's trying to stop this guy playing roulette. And his name is Bill, who's my grandfather, and her name is Frances, who is my grandmother in real life. So Julian Fellows, who makes Downton Abbey, decided to put my grandparents as characters in a film within the film of Downton Abbey. And so that's interesting. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I mean, I can't put that in the book because the book ends in 1912, but
Yep.
That's perhaps something that we need to find out why they did that, and how can we use that in publicity without the Downton Abbey legal team getting annoyed with us. Yes. So I mean, that's what makes as I said earlier, the adventure continues, because every day something extraordinary happens.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, the two things there. First, the female editor. The piece that's interesting there for me is the fact that you found an editor that helped in a very specific way around specific content within the book, which I think is interesting. And that second point, yeah, I mean, just obviously, hopefully, great marketing that you can leverage through a big, TV name already being Downton Abbey. So, what about the publishing? The last question on the process, I suppose. Publishing, did you find a publisher? Did you go your own route? How did you approach the publishing element of the book?
There's a process called writing query letters, which is when you submit your manuscript to literary agents. I submitted 184 individual tailor-made query letters. Mainly, the literary agents are mainly in New York and around the world, but mainly still in New York. And there were sort of vague responses. And eventually I thought, you know what, this is going to take too long. Because even when the literary agent accepts to be your knight in shining armor, they then have to pitch that to one of the big 5 publishers. Even then, if you get a deal, you will not see the book until about 2 years from then. And I just got to the point where it was finally done. Now I want to see it out there. The other thing is that I don't want to get in trouble over this, but the big publishers don't do the kind of marketing that they used to do, unless you are one of the top 10 authors on the planet, because they just don't have the resources. Because media is so fragmented these days. It's impossible for a publisher to open up a new Twitter account and an Instagram account. They can't do that. So publicists do that. Anyway, after all that, I thought, you know what, we're going to do this ourselves, because we'll end up doing all the marketing anyway. I'm the one that's going to organize talks and book launches and meeting people and the publicity. So it's a lot easier than it used to be to publish yourself. We have a company called Pinewood Media in LA. It's our business, so we keep 100% control of the copyright, and it takes a bit of research, because you want to get it right, and then we simultaneously launched paperback, hardback, Kindle, audiobook. We've got a fantastic guide to the audio. It's 14 hours, the audiobook.
Wow.
So that's how long is the plane from London to Thailand?
It's about 14 hours, roughly.
Perfect. Right.
Kind of,
so on your way back,
12 hours one way. Well, I mean, I am constantly listening to stuff. So yeah. That, I mean, for me, audiobooks work better than anything, because I do it on my bike when I'm cycling. I'll do it when I'm working out. So yeah, it's, good. I will do that. I'll go audiobook. I'm glad. 14 hours. Well, that'll be done in 2 or 3 weeks for me. If it's
well, it was very hard to find the right person to do this, because it's written in American English. The character is American, the narrator is American, but there are Russians, Italians, Mexicans, Canadians, French women, English women, a Scottish army officer. So this person had to do all those accents.
Wow. Okay.
Right, which was very hard, and it was all thanks to the actors' strike that we found someone who was available, who had time. Kevin Clay, and he's in Arkansas, and he's a miracle worker. It was so amazing. There's no way I could have done that. I do an American accent, but my wife won't let me leave the house with it. So we had to find somebody else to do it, and I'm so pleased. And so it's extraordinary, and we're winning awards. So we're winning awards all over the place. And in fact, yesterday we got an honorary mention in the New York Festival of Book Awards, which is kind of fun. But and so, as I said, it's ongoing. It doesn't stop ever.
Awesome. Well, it's a cool project. It's a fascinating project because it incorporates so many different elements of the creative process of writing a book. Like you just said, I mean, it's the research piece, obviously the connection to family. The fact that the audio book piece you just mentioned there, someone needing to kind of learn all those different elements. So it's a really fascinating project. And also, I mean, congratulations. You're super, obviously not just passionate about it. I mean, it's kind of sounds like it's been your life for some time now, and that kind of is portrayed quite clearly. So congrats. So where can people, where do people find the book? For anyone listening or watching, I will put this link in these links in the notes. But even if they Google, leave us with your links or how they find the book and get hold of you.
Great. Okay. Well, the easiest thing to do is to go to Amazon, because Amazon rules the world, whether we like it or not. And go to Amazon and just type in The Gambler's Game, and please leave a review. There's more information all over the place. If you just Google The Gambler's Game, there's people have written about it, and people continue to write about it. And there's people who write about Monte Carlo. He's in loads and loads of other books already, but it's like the jigsaw puzzle. So that finally, there's actually one place where we can enjoy his journey with him. There's also thegamblersgame.com, and there's Bill_Darnborough is the Instagram account, and there's Facebook. I mean, it just goes on and on, doesn't it?
Well, I'll put all those links in there, but yeah.
So. No, don't worry. The easiest thing is to just go to Amazon and enjoy the book, whether it's audio or Kindle on your Kindle or your laptop or the hardback. Please just enjoy the journey as much as I have.
Cool. All right. Well, I've enjoyed this chat. It's been really good to learn a bit more about the book. And I can see a bit of sun creeping through the window or in the mirror of where the window is. So it looks like you've actually got a bit of English summer happening, which is good. I'll be there soon.
We had 3 days of serious heat, and then a thunderstorm rolled in last night, which is kind of nice because it kind of freshens everything up again. But yeah, it's the UK. You just never know what you're going to get.
That's so true. Cool, James. Well, look, good to meet, good to chat. Have a great weekend, and look, thanks for jumping on.
Thanks, Matt. It's been a real pleasure. Real pleasure. Thank you so much.
We want to be free to do what we want to do.
Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barker, the president of Hell's Angels.
This is 1095.